Hello, today we're going to talk about Module 3 lines, and we're going to review that, specifically looking at distance, midpoint, and slope. So the first thing we want to go ahead and look at is distance. Now, distance, when we find it, we use the formula that distance is my square root, x2 minus x1 squared, plus y2 minus y1 squared. So where do these y2s and y1s and all that come from? When I have my ordered pair, 2, 3, 5, 7, the first ordered pair is my first x, my first y, because it's just the first ordered pair. My second ordered pair makes x2 and y2. So now I'm going to plug them into this formula to calculate my distance. Now, one thing you have to always know is distance can never be negative. So if I end up taking a square of a negative, it's never going to be a negative answer. If you have a negative answer, just count it wrong because it's not correct. You cannot have a negative distance. You can move a negative direction, but you can't have a negative distance. So x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And this formula is also not on your formula sheet. You need to know it and have it written down. So 3 squared plus 4 squared, 9 plus 16, square root of 25, which evaluates to 5. Now, not always does it come to be a nice, pretty number. Sometimes you will have a decimal, or it'll ask you to simplify the radical. Next, we're going to talk about midpoint. The midpoint formula says the midpoint equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Midpoint is just the middle. It's an average. If you want to find the middle of something, you take the average of it. Same idea here. So if I have my ordered pairs being 3, -2, 7, and 4, I just plug it in and see what happens. So again, x1, y1, x2, y2. So my midpoint equals 3 plus 7 divided by 2, -2 plus 4 divided by 2. I just plug it in. Now I'm going to do my math. So I have 10 halves. I have 2 halves. Not simplified, so now I'm going to simplify it to be 5, 1. Midpoint is an ordered pair. And now sometimes we end up trying to find an end point. So say I'm given 2 ordered pairs. I say A is -2 and 5. Oops, sorry. I'm giving you the midpoint to be 3 and 6. And I want to find out what this other endpoint down here is. What am I going to do? The easiest is to do something we call stacking. We just stack these numbers on top of each other. There's my first ordered pair. There's my midpoint. And this is the guy I'm looking for. What we know about midpoint is that here it's in the middle. So that means whatever distance goes from here to here is also the same distance from here to here. So to go from -2 to 3, I had to travel 5 in the positive direction because -2 plus 5 gives me 3. That means from this 3, I've got to go plus 5 again to get 8. On this side right here, I'm only looking at the y's. 5 to get to 6, I only added 1. That means if I add 1, I'm at 8, 7, which is my other end point. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is slope. Slope tells us that my slope is going to end up being y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. It should look semi-familiar to a formula over here. Hello, same things. They all kind of derive from the same place. So the basics of slope, if you remember, is just the change of y over the change of x, or if you remember back when, rise over run. Same thing, all the same thing. But if I'm given two ordered pairs, I use my formula to find slope. So say I'm given 2, 3, maybe 3, 6. Again, x1, y1, x2, y2. So my slope is going to be 6 minus 3, 3 minus 2. So 6 minus 3 is 3, 3 minus 2 is 1, and I'm going to simplify. It's 3. Straightforward, out of algebra, pre-algebra, same thing. Now, there's other ways we can see our slope as well. Sometimes you're going to be given an equation. It's going to say, what's my slope? This equation here is in the form of y equals mx plus b, where that's my slope 3/2. So sometimes it's in an equation. Sometimes in your equation it might say 2x plus 3y equals 5. What's my slope? You have to redo this equation so it's in this form, which means then I have to bring the 2x to the other side. Now divide each piece by the number in front of the y. And then now, if I'm trying to calculate my slope, it's always what's right in front of my x. So sometimes it's put into what we call standard form, and you're going to have to write it in slope-intercept form to find my slope. You cannot find the slope off a standard form. You can only find it off here, unless you put it on a calculator and you count it, but that's kind of taking a long time. Then we moved into, hey, with parallel lines, how am I going to find the slope of a parallel line? A parallel line has the same slope as the equation, because sometimes they'll give you an equation and they'll say, hey, if y equals 2/5 x minus 5, what's the parallel slope? Well, the parallel slope is exactly the same slope here, so my slope here is 2/5, so my parallel slope is 2/5. It makes sense because if I have a parallel line, he's the same distance going up, so he's going to be the same slope. Now I have my perpendicular line. In my perpendicular line, they say, okay, the slope is a negative reciprocal. Again, that means if my slope up above is 2/5, then that's an upside down t is perpendicular. So my perpendicular slope is the negative of that, and then these two flip. So it becomes 5/2. So it's negative 5/2. Let's look at that one again with a different one. Let's just say my slope is 1/4, negative 1/4. Then my perpendicular slope takes the opposite, or the negative of that, so that's positive, and flips it. So it's 4/1, which equals 4. And we'll just do one more. If my slope was 0, then my perpendicular slope is, well, 0, if you remember, is my horizontal line like this. So what's the slope of my vertical line? Undefined. And remember, perpendicular lines cross like a perfect T with a 90-degree angle. Just something to keep in mind. If you have any questions, problems before the test, please do not hesitate to email me or message me. Thank you.